Test 1 2 here. Okay, good. Good morning, kids. Welcome to another episode of The Abyss AM, where we talk about news and enjoy some caffeine. I'm your host, The Eternal Abyss. How's everybody doing? Hope everyone's doing fantastic. I was having some audio issues last night, so I just wanted to make sure that uh, everybody could hear me. That's why I started out with the test 1 2. So I hope you have your coffee. I have mine. In fact, I have about 2 cups worth. I have a big mug, so I got plenty of caffeine. A little piping hot right now, so I'm gonna wait on that before I take a sip. But for those that were with the stream last night, between last night and now, not a whole lot of crazy news is going on here, but there's always something to talk about. Of course there is. Like, for example, that the LA Times publishes a Beijing funded propaganda piece, because why not? Or that you have Trump visiting Mount Rushmore, which you know there are people that when all this statue toppling came about and rioting and looting, there are people. I didn't tweet about this, but I had thought about this, that people were tweeting out, oh, they're gonna go after Mount Rushmore next. And this isn't new, because in the other times when they pulled down some statues they wanted to deface or remove Mount Rushmore, because they say, oh, 2 of the presidents on there were slave owners, and it's a native land and all that. Well, my only question to these people is, where do you live? For the native land argument, because if you live anywhere in the United States, guess what? According to your own logic, that's native land. Why don't you give it back? And if America was built, if our prosperity is so evil, why don't you give back every single dollar that you've earned while you're here in the United States? So basically, liquidate all your assets. Move away. If the United States is so evil, as they want to put it. But President Trump went and did a visit to Mount Rushmore, and where'd I go? Oh, he hasn't visited yet. I'm sorry. But he's visiting it today, on Friday. So he's gonna start his Independence Day weekend with a fireworks display at Mount Rushmore, and there's gonna be crowds gathering. And the news is already putting forth all this kind of spin and nonsense, saying, there's been 7,500 tickets, and they're like, oh, there's concerns about coronavirus outbreak as thousands gather for this. But who cares about the thousands that gathered for all the rioting, looting, protesting? That's not the concern for them. It's only when people want to celebrate, or they're pro-Trump, or they're conservative, or they're religious. They want to get together to worship. But oh no, they want to get together to see Trump, or they want to get together to see fireworks? No, that's going to cause an outbreak. Man, coronavirus is a very specific virus, isn't it? If that's the case. I mean, they must know something about the virus that we don't know. This virus must be like, must be like those liberal arts it must be a liberal arts college student, because it seems to just apparently it only affects those that are opposite of that political ideology. According to their science. I guess that's what it is. It's a very left leaning virus apparently that doesn't do anything to the left, but loves infecting the right when the right wants to do anything, or when conservatives want to do anything. Yeah. Well, hey, who knew viruses could be political? In this day and age, everything can be apparently. So wow, there you have it. Um, moving forward with that, see, I mean, I understand the concerns. Like, being serious for a moment, I do understand the concern, and I understand that, any crowd gathering, there is that potential. Apart from my being facetious right now, but at the same time, it's so obvious and ridiculous what the media here is doing, what the politicians are doing, that they're vilifying one group for gathering, but the other, because it matches their little ideologies and their that sliver of ideology that they have. Oh, they're okay. They're okay with it. I mean, it's just hypocritical. It's a double standard. It's really dumb. And then you have also other, like, ridiculous things that are happening regarding the police and these protests, and like San Francisco is going to stop releasing most mugshots to prevent quote unquote implicit bias against quote black and brown men. Um, First of all, I don't believe in such a thing as implicit bias, or like an unconscious bias, because you can't you can't have a bias about something that you're unaware of. Okay, it's very difficult to prove psychologically that it's fact. Now, do human beings categorize things? Do human beings classify things? Sure. That's how we make sense of our world. Biologically, we have to do that. It's an evolutionary thing. It's something that, we need to interpret different plants. We need to categorize what's edible, what's not edible. We need to categorize what's a predator and what can be prey. You need to categorize what is good shelter versus what is bad shelter, and that's just evolved over time to what we do in our daily lives now. What's good coffee versus Starbucks, for example. I hate Starbucks coffee. I don't like it. It's burnt. It's just way overburnt. But that's for another time. Um, so that's the thing about running on the assumption. Okay, let's just put it this way: running on the assumption that everybody is racist is an incorrect assumption. That's like if you're going into a court of law and you're assuming everybody's guilty. That's not, you can't run a proper legal system that way. You can't. So, does that mean that there aren't racist people? No. I mean, there are a few. And the thing is you have to me, you got to fix the problem with the where the problem lies. You can't say there's a problem in the ether. Put this kind of untangible problem that you can apply to anyone and anything indiscriminately. But like I said, it's not that doesn't mean that prejudices and biases and racism and discrimination doesn't exist. It does exist, but it's not something implicit. It's not something you're born with. It's not like Van Jones said, "Oh, white people have a virus." No, no. And I wouldn't even say that about any other ethnic group, any other ethnicity or skin people, any group, whatever it may be. I wouldn't say that about anybody because that behavior, that animosity, hate towards another group, that's taught. That comes from you. It doesn't come from something that you just happen to be born with. You popped out into the world and now all of a sudden you're a racist. That's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. It's learned behavior. And it's learned behavior either taught by other people, like parents, grandparents, what have you, your other people around you, and it may be even formed by your own experiences. Let's say you have a negative experience with a certain group of people. You will form a connection with that. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's true that like if you have a negative experience with a group of people that all the people of that group are of that caliber, for example. But it's just human nature that if you have a bad experience, like I can tell you, if I'm driving on the road and someone cuts me off 9 out of 10 times, I see a New Jersey plate. Guess what? I'm gonna start saying New Jersey drivers suck. Sorry, New Jersey, but you guys drive like mad. I don't know what is the matter with you. I don't know how they teach driver's ed in New Jersey. It seems like everything is just a mere suggestion, and you can follow. It's up to you if you want to follow it. But another like driving example is driving in Texas. If there's just a sugar coating, like a powdered sugar coating of snow on the ground, all Texans lose complete control of their faculties when it comes to driving. I've had that experience. I've traveled around the United States, so I've seen these experiences, you know, and I would see certain things like that. You form these connections that New Jersey drivers are terrible and that Texas drivers can't handle even a droplet of rain on the ground, that they lose their minds, for example. And I don't want to piss off Texans. Lord knows you don't want to do that. But um, but essentially, what it boils down to is this: is that there's nothing abnormal about the human brain creating categorizations and connections and that, because that's how it files everything. That's how it makes sense of the world around it. To imply that by birth there is this genome of racism or this DNA of racism or these neurons of I don't like this color people. I don't like this color people. No. That's just not how the brain works. That's not how biology works. And for people that tout science a lot on that side of the political spectrum, you think they would rely more on biology. But then again, you know, these are the same groups of people that claim that there are thousands of genders, which biologically doesn't make any sense. But we're not going to get into a whole debate about gender because that's not what I want to do a morning stream about. It really isn't. So there's really no other news like when it comes to like Ghislaine Maxwell. Just moving on. Um, Not a whole lot going on right now. It's still very early on, and but there is going to be a bail hearing in Manhattan regarding this. So that's really the only news for now. I haven't seen anything else really come through. And people are making preparations for the 4th of July. that's really also the big news. Like I mentioned at the beginning here, Trump is going to be doing a holiday weekend here. Going, I think he's going to do several events, from my understanding. Still waiting for my coffee to cool down a little bit so I don't burn myself. But while I'm waiting a little bit for my coffee to cool down, and I'm gonna take a quick gander at some news items that are happening. I want to say hello to everybody on Bitwave, everybody on D Live, everybody on YouTube, and everybody on Periscope. How's everybody doing? I hope you have your coffee. Taking a quick look here at a few different things. Oh, let me bring up my. I had forgotten to bring up my little chat thingy do here. Oops. Open up. There we go. Let's see. I'll take a sip of my coffee here. Mm. Oh yes, very good. Ah. Um. Well, this is something that's interesting. Also, I just noticed in the news. Seems like New York County. Oh, I was gonna talk a little bit about LA too. So, but New York County issues costly subpoenas to people for refusing to talk to coronavirus contact tracers. It's Rockland County in New York. So officials in New York's Rockland County announced on Wednesday that they had issued subpoenas to 8 people allegedly infected by the coronavirus for refusing to speak with contact tracers voluntarily. And the reply of the county executive was, "The health of our county will not be compromised because of ignorance, stupidity, and obstinance." Ed Day, this genius right here. See, this is the problem right here. What this Ed Day just said right here. This vilification of people and using the power of government to persecute people just because they don't agree with you, whether for right or wrong. They may be even wrong in their interpretation of what's going on and how this whole healthcare has been handled, which there's room for argument, honestly, on how it's been handled, especially for places like New York and Michigan and like many blue areas, unfortunately. But you are seeing spikes in red areas now for one reason or another, and part of it has to do with protests. Part of it has to do with maybe the reopening is moving a little too fast. But also the spike has to do with the fact that there's like 500,000 tests being done a day. 500,000 tests are being done a day, so obviously you're going to see more numbers. But the death rate is still going down. Like the number of people dying of the virus is in decline, and that's the real positive news. No matter how big the numbers get. So again, I mentioned this just about at every stream. Be weary of the numbers when you see them because that's not the whole picture. So that's um that's what I would say. But this is a problem where the government is actually legally persecuting people. And there's no laws for this. And they say that a failure to comply would be a costly $2,000 per day. The county health commissioner added. So these people are, I mean, people are already suffering financially. They're suffering psychologically too. I know people personally that are like really, really, really struggling with this whole thing. And there has been reports of increased depression numbers and increased suicides and things of that nature. And what does the government do instead of trying to resolve this? They're using their power to abuse and persecute. It's ridiculous. It's quite ridiculous. Um, if I were in such a situation, I would actually sue the city for what they're doing, or the county. I mean, not in this case, the not city, county. And their claim is that that people have forced them to resort to subpoenas. I don't think so. I don't think that the people have forced them to do so. The counties, cities, and states have forced people, and the media is complicit in this, have galvanized people in this whole COVID situation. This could have been handled far differently without having to put political ideologies in on the front lines of the COVID debate. But the media decided they wanted to be political and still push their agenda because they wanted to hurt Trump. Because it's an election year. Governors as well, they made very political decisions. And it's sad. And I'm talking on both sides too. I'm not just talking to Democrats. It's very prominent on the Democrat side. But you had Republicans as well that made very political decisions, which is why you had some that opened too fast, in my opinion. I didn't disagree with opening up the country, but I do think that you needed to do the right things, take the right steps, cross your T's, dot your I's, pace it properly. So if you're not, and this is the biggest thing here, see, if they're not receiving the necessary, they're saying they're not receiving the necessary cooperation for contact tracing. Well, the question that comes to my mind is, if you're not receiving the proper cooperation, why is that? Could it be that much of what you've done before was contradictory, was inaccurate, was galvanizing politically, was vilifying people over masks? Was it that people cannot trust you because you put old people in contact with COVID? And that was state policy. So Cuomo has a direct responsibility there, because the buck stops at him, does it not? And he claims ignorance of it. I find it hard to believe, because this was throughout the entire state. And as soon as first reports of this came up, he did nothing. He said nothing. He didn't act on it. He let it go for a while. And then, now all of a sudden, when there's like 40% of seniors, 40% of the deaths in the state of New York came from senior homes. Oh, well, I guess, exterminating an entire generation. Yeah, that's kind of a bad thing. Just saying. So we're at news reports like this again. You had this happen in Michigan where they were persecuting people legally. You have New York that's doing it. And I'm sure California and some other states are going to do it. That you have Texas now with a mandate. Who knows how they're going to enforce that? I haven't seen any reports from Texas and Governor Abbott and how they plan to enforce that if people refuse to wear a mask during this mandate. So I don't know how that's going to work out either. I really don't know. Hi MZ. Hi Troll VIPW. Don't forget about the Vanilla Ice comeback. Yeah, you're high this early in the morning. Um, yeah, I talked about that last night. Actually, no, I talked that about yesterday morning. Like one of the thing was that he was going to be performing for 4th of July, and I'm like, whoa, it seems like Vanilla Ice is still a thing. Who knew? Wouldn't it be funny though if Vanilla Ice made like a really big comeback, that his career would take off again? That would be that would be so funny to me. And a little part of me kind of wishes that because he was such a goofy guy. Oh, pain? What pain, MZ, if you don't mind my asking? But wouldn't it be so funny if Vanilla Ice made a comeback? I remember when he hit the big scene and he was such a weird, goofy, noodly guy while he was dancing, and he was even in one of the ninja, like the second Ninja Turtles movie. Go ninja, go ninja, go! I still remember that. I know I'm aging myself. Shut up. All right, gotta drink some more coffee. Yeah, but if you have some sort of chronic pain, I can understand that meds can help. But going back to LA, because I had mentioned that I want to just briefly talk about that here. Where'd my article go? I lost it. Here we go. So, the Los Angeles Times ran a paid insert over the weekend from China Daily, a news agency controlled by the Chinese Communist Party, and has forked out millions of dollars to American newspapers as part of Beijing's foreign influence operations. The 8-page advertorial, I'm sorry, called China Watch, was tucked towards the back of the paper's 61-page Sunday edition. With articles designed to look like legitimate newspaper columns, the insert presents a rosy view of the Chinese economy and its businesses. The advertorial also included stories suggesting that the United States and China should maintain a positive relationship despite diplomatic and economic tensions surrounding the coronavirus pandemic. Absent is any critique of the Chinese government's handling of the pandemic, which originated in Wuhan last year and has spread across the globe. Decoupling supply chains imprudent, says experts, says one story in the insert, which argued against a push for some U.S. policymakers to make American business less reliant on Chinese companies for raw materials and other supplies. A story in the insert headline, Conflicted We Fail, Connected We Succeed, quotes David Firestein, the president of the George H.W. Bush China Foundation. Firestein touted the organization's role in procuring medical equipment from China to provide to American hospitals to fight coronavirus. He also offered a subtly critical view of U.S. policymakers' outlook towards China. He called the recent breakdown in relations between China and the U.S. very short-sighted and very unfortunate. The insert discloses that it is an advertising section and that it is published by China Daily without editorial input from the LA Times newspaper. From the LA Times. U.S. newspapers have cited those disclosures to defend publishing that is widely viewed as a form of foreign propaganda. So, here's the thing. All right. There's more to the article, but I think that pretty much gives you the gist of what's going on here. So, let me just say one thing. Newspapers, I mean, if people want to, I don't know of any law or any regulation of that industry. I don't know. I'm not aware of anything specific that says that a newspaper. Good morning to you, Hetero Alpha God. Thank you for joining. Oh wow, MZ, you had a car accident. That broke most of your bones. Ouch. Well, I'm glad that you're still with us. First of all, I'm sorry to hear that, and yeah. I have some injuries myself that nothing as extreme as that, but I can somewhat relate to your plight. Injuries will produce those kind of results, and it's unfortunate. So I wish you the best. I hope that the meds help and that you're around with us for a long time. I've seen you on Bitwave ever since I joined up here. I mean, you probably have been around since the Streamlab days, haven't you? Just taking a sip of my coffee here. Um, but going back to the article, like I was saying, I'm not aware of any specific law or rule saying that, like this sort of thing. Good to know, MZ. I don't know of any law that prevents Chinese government or Russian government or anything like that. I mean, I know there's election interference laws, which you shouldn't allow foreign powers to try and influence foreign, our election cycle, which obviously they want to do. Any government run newspaper or any party that publishes propaganda of this kind, I mean, obviously it's going to be propaganda. They're gonna put themselves in the best light. I don't know how I feel about the LA Times publishing this thing. At least it was disclosed that it was an advertorial. It was disclosed that it came where it came from. So I have to at least say, it wasn't kind of like a sneaky attempt at propaganda. At least they say, well, hey, this is a paid advertisement. This is, from the CCP. Make your own judgment call at the end of the day. And I think that's what people are going to have to do if they disclose it, because some people are defending this, saying, well, they disclose it. So they're not trying to just push propaganda and be sneaky about it and subversive about it and things like that. But at the same time, it's pretty obvious that that's what China engages in. China has been engaged in a propaganda, in propaganda activities for quite a long time. Any communist government or a socialist government, fascism happened with Mussolini, Hitler, Mao. Now we have the CCP. Russia, Pravda, for example, is just a propaganda paper for the Russians. Any government that wants to exert control has to control the level of information that goes to the people. Oh, you've been here when you could have caps in the name. Nice, very cool. Yeah. I wasn't around for the Streamlabs days, but when Bitwave first started, I think I came in not even a month after it started. Oh, you couldn't have caps in names. Ah, right. Yeah, it's come a long way since then. But going back to what I was saying, I kind of interrupt myself here. No, but basically, I don't like the idea of foreign governments, any foreign government, putting propaganda in American newspapers, because you're always going to have a percentage of people that aren't going to be discerning. They're not going to be critical thinkers. They're just going to read what they read or hear what they hear, and that's it. And they're going to take it at face value. Oh, there wasn't even any video capability stuff back then. Oh, I have no idea. See, that I came right when the video stuff was available. I think I was a month in or so when Dispatch was running the site. Uh, wow, very interesting. I wasn't quite aware of that it was just chat at first. I thought he had put something just basic up in terms of video stuff, but that's interesting. I had no idea. But essentially, when it comes back to the whole China thing, I'm gonna try and wrap up that point because I keep interrupting myself. um, I don't like the idea of that. I don't think that that's the case. Now, said that, there is one thing that I do want to say about foreign relations between the United States and China. Um, I do think that I think it's beneficial for the United States to have good relations with any country. regardless of how good or bad that country is. Because having good relations with the countries around the world ultimately will benefit us here in the United States, and that benefit will come down to the people because there's going to be less conflict. There's going to be possibly more trade, so there's going to be more commerce, more money, more prosperity, more opportunity for business as well, more opportunity for United States businesses to do business with other countries, because our economy is not solely based on national commerce. It's also based off of international commerce, obviously. So it would be beneficial, in my opinion, to have good relations with any country. So I do hope that the United States and China do work out their differences, and that trade deals that are made are fair for both parties. I don't want to screw other countries, but we don't need to get screwed in the process. Uh, However, that doesn't mean that countries are immune to criticism. Or if a country if a country is egregiously guilty of human rights violations, like China is, where they round up people, there's this I can't remember the specific sect, but there's this I don't even know if it's a sect actually. This specific population of Muslims in China that they round up for re-education, or even their own population, not just these Muslims, even just other Chinese people that don't agree with the government. There's I think millions of people that are denied plane tickets. Hi, Punished Monkey. No, even Israel can be criticized. I say Chinese Uyghurs. Is that how you pronounce that? I may be mispronouncing that. Thank you, though, by the way. No, I've said this in streams in the past. Every country is open to criticism. Every country is open to praise, and every country is open to having a good or bad relationship with the United States. It's really up to them, because I feel like if I were in charge of the United States, my goal would be to reach out to any country and have a good relationship with them. And if they do something good, great. If they do something bad, I'll criticize them. I wouldn't play a political game of not criticizing a country just because I fear. Yeah. Oh, okay. Great. Thank you. Thank you for providing that punishment. I didn't. That's the reason why I didn't remember, because it was just such an unusual name. But yeah, that's the China Muslim ethnic minority. That's they've rounded them up and put them in camps, and that's human rights violation right there. That's the definition of it. Um, but the United States, let's take the United States and the United Kingdom for example. The United States and the United Kingdom are probably one of the closest allies in the world, and I have no problem giving them praise where praise is worth, where it's is due. But if they are praiseworthy, I'm more than happy to provide that. But if if they do something stupid, or they do something bad, or they make a poor decision, the UK have, in my opinion, done some huge violations of free speech and human rights because of political correctness. People like the mayor of London, the little hobbit that you have there as the mayor of London, that guy, um, he has basically ruined London. From what I hear about, I know some folks, even some folks here on Bitwave. Kowalski, for example, he's our resident Brit, is he not? I think we have a couple other resident Brits as well. But from what I hear between them and other people that I know, the UK is a mess, and London especially is garbage. Uh, Crime has skyrocketed in London. People have told me that they used to live there and it used to be far safer, and then recently, that they moved out, they haven't felt so unsafe in such a long time. So I'm more than happy to criticize countries. I'm more than happy to criticize governments. I'm more than happy to criticize individual politicians. I don't blame the people of those countries, not so much, because it's not always the people that make these decisions, though the people do put some of these people in power in a case of like the UK. So the people do have a responsibility in that situation. When you have a dictatorship like China, essentially, it's kind of hard to put the blame on the people because these people are under a dictatorship. They're under the thumb of a authoritarian government. It's kind of hard to put a lot of blame on them, except for the fact that maybe more should be fighting against it. But it's a hard situation. I'm not open to just pointing the finger and putting all the blame on people for that reason, because it's a very difficult situation and you can't necessarily do that. I'm gonna take another sip of my coffee here, but before I do, I just have to do some shameless self promotion. Follow me on Twitter, on Gab, on Minds, and on Parlor while I'm still there. I don't know if I'm going to be there for much longer. We'll see what happens with that. But follow me there. The handle is at The Eternal Abyss. If you just search for The Eternal Abyss, I'll show up. On Twitter, my handle is at The Eternal Abyss with only one S because Twitter. um, so be sure to follow, and because I'm trying to grow that user base there, especially on the alternate platforms on Gab, Minds, and Parler. If I decide to stay there, I really want to grow those more so than Twitter, because Twitter has become nigh impossible to navigate. The user interface is bad. It's buggy. And let's not even get started on the politics of Twitter, where they're just banning conservatives left and right. They're censoring left and right. They're really messing with followers. I have been stuck at around 7,000 for easily 6 months because of the censorship that Jack Dorsey at Twitter does. They do a constant purge of users. So no matter, like, I generally gain about 20 or so users a day, and I usually lose about that much too, 20 to 25. Generally, I lose a little more than I gain because of the purging, and I have these apps that lets me see who unfollows me and things of that nature. And a lot of times it's like this user's is deleted. It's a suspended account. This user, like people that I lose off my account, are suspended accounts because reasons. Ask Twitter. I don't know. So that's why I humbly ask, please follow me on social media. Please help me grow so I can reach a point where it makes it harder and harder for Twitter to silence people like myself and other conservatives. Speaking of silencing, you also need to follow me on YouTube and on DLive and on Periscope and here on Bitway. Hit that notification bell so you get notified when I go live. I have a set time. It doesn't always work out that way, so it's best for you to follow and share and hit the notification bell so you know when I go live. Or sometimes things happen and I have to skip a stream, and I want to make sure that people are aware. And if you care to support this work that I do here, to try and raise production values, I would truly be appreciative. Streamlabs.com/theeternalabyss. Any level of generosity is greatly appreciated. And that's my shameless plugging, shameless advertising. So here we go. Another thing that I found very interesting is, again, this is another critique of the media. I mean, I critique the media a lot. And for good reason. I mean, it's not, I don't just attack the media for the sake of attacking the media. They bring it upon themselves. And this says something else, where the father of the teen that was shot and killed at the Chop Chaz, nobody's talking to this guy except for Fox News. And Trump even called him to talk to him. Not even Mayor Jenny Durkin, the Summer Love Mayor, as I call her. because she defined Chop Chaz as it's a summer of love. She didn't even call him. She's made no effort to reach out to this man. His son was killed because of Chaz, because of her. It's very few circumstances, I would say, where a politician almost has an almost direct hand in the ending of a life because of their inaction and their allowing of things like Chop Chaz. But in this case, Mayor Jenny Durkin is one of those few circumstances where when you say you've got blood on your hands, because a lot of people like to say that in politics and in the media. Drinking some more coffee here. There's like I said, there's very few circumstances where if you use that term relating to a politician, you've got blood on your hands. You've got blood on your hands. Which occasionally, even I have said when it comes to certain things. And I usually mean it in a more metaphorical sense. I don't mean it like literally that they are directly responsible for the death of someone. But I usually mean it that there is a connection. There's some responsibility there. In this case, it's pretty damn direct. It's pretty damn direct to her. She allowed Chaz Chop to exist. She refused to act on it. She kept claiming it was peaceful. She kept claiming that there was nothing wrong with it. She kept claiming that they were just peacefully assembling. It was just a protest. And someone died from it. There were 4 shootings then. I think 1 or 2 were fatal. And now she's been trying to disassemble the whole thing. I think at this point it is gone. I've been hearing that they struggled to get rid of this thing. I have to check to see what the status of Chop is. Or Chaz, whatever. But this is one of those circumstances where she had a direct hand in this. And to me that is utterly disgusting. Because this could have been avoided. No, of course I don't want to blame the victim here, and I don't want to say that he shouldn't have been there in the first place, but he kind of shouldn't have. These people should not have been putting this whole thing together. They creating their own little nation state. And if he was there as a protester. And if he was peacefully protesting, one could argue, well, okay, he was just there peacefully protesting, whatever. That's within his rights. I'm not blaming the guy for that. But if he was there as part of these people that were part of the Chaz Chop, that were being jerks and were not doing this whole peaceful protest thing, and he ended up getting shot because of it, it's still a terrible tragedy. It shouldn't have. I don't wish death on anybody. I don't wish violence on anybody. What this father is going through is horrific. Losing a child is nothing to wish upon anybody. I don't wish that on anybody. But you have to kind of look at the reality for what it is too. Because if this kid was there, and he should not have been there, it's unfortunate. But part of the responsibility is also his, because he could have just stayed away from that area and he wouldn't have been shot. Again, does that mean that this isn't a tragedy? Of course, it's a tragedy. I don't want anybody to die. I don't want a father to lose their son. It's a terrible thing. It's an absolutely terrible thing. But I've used this analogy in the past. It's like if I walk in downtown Detroit at like 3 a.m. in a gang-infested area, and then I get stabbed or shot, am I really shocked about that? I went there. I put myself in that situation. So even at a minimum, some of that has to rest on my shoulders. Yeah, they had to. They have to. That's true, Troll. That they have to keep relabeling things because every time something comes up like this, like LGBT, LGBTQ, LGBT, Latinx, Chop, Chaz. I find this relabeling quite funny because it's like a focus group. They use a name and then they realize, oh wait a minute, this isn't really getting the traction that we were hoping for. Let's change it. And then that one goes, oh, that one isn't good as well. Let's change it again. Um, and in some cases, I kind of understand why they keep changing it. Like in the case of LGBT, I understand that they're trying to be as inclusive as possible, and they keep adding groups and adding groups and adding groups. But at the same time, it's like, well, like at a certain point, you got to make a choice. What are you going to name something? Are you going to name something one thing or not? Because it makes it, and I think part of it is also that it makes it very confusing for people to keep track of this sort of thing, especially those like myself who may have a problem with Chop or Chaz or whatever, and they keep changing the name. It makes it difficult to like have a consistent tracing from beginning to end of Chaz. Because now I can't only look up Chaz if I want to look up news items or get an update on it. I got to look at Chop as well. So I do think there's a bit of strategy involved in that. I think that it is intentional as well to an extent. Like I think there's a strategic reason why they do that, apart from just marketing their ideas. Because that's really what the left and the right is doing nowadays. The world now, especially the United States, is a marketplace of ideas, and each side has to market their ideas to gain traction. So how are you going to market these ideas? Well, you got to have catchy acronyms, catchy names. You got to have talking points, which is very funny. Like there was this one thing I mentioned this a while ago in one of my streams where there was some Twitter trend, and every single tweet was using the same verbiage, the exact same wording with some very minor variations. You had that with a lot like school shootings news items that came out by maybe last year or what have you. Um, you have politicians and media outlets. There's videos of like if you go on YouTube and search about talking points that news outlets use. It's very fascinating to see like local and national news that there's these talking points that are distributed, and everybody says the same exact thing. It's kind of scary when you watch it, and I see two sides to that. On one side, I understand that you don't want to have to rewrite a news item for like 100 different outlets if you own 100 different news outlets from local to national to radio. At the same time, it's kind of weird that you just have them say the exact same thing and all skewed in a particular way. That's really where the problem lies to me. It's not just a matter of stating the exact same facts, because the facts are the facts. If a shooting happened or a robbery happened or some other thing happened, the news item, the factual aspect of it won't change. It's just the spin that gets put on it that changes, which is why you need to, I use websites like allsides.com to see on one particular news item like what each side is saying, and then the truth is somewhere where the commonality lies. And even all sides, I don't quite agree exactly with their categorization of what is left, right, far left. I think there's some missing nuance there, and I think some outlets are labeled as more mild than they really are. Because like CNN is not a centrist or a mildly left outlet, yet all sides labels it as such. So I think that they need to be far more accurate in their labeling of media outlets. But yeah, this whole thing is very disconcerting to see that the media doesn't care about this individual that got killed because it doesn't fit their narrative. It makes the Chop Chaz look bad. So the CNN isn't even talking to this guy. MSNBC isn't talking to this guy. None of the media outlets are talking to this guy except for Fox News, and that's pretty much it. President Trump actually had the decency to call him and talk to the man who lost his son. But the mayor, who's almost directly responsible for creating the environment that killed this man's son, didn't even bother to call him. Didn't even bother. And that brings up an argument that I've made in the past regarding liability. I do think that laws need to change and that legislators and elected officials, from senators, representatives, to commissioners and council members, to mayors and governors and federal legislators, need to be there needs to be some liability there. There needs to be some tie to their actions that they take in making and signing law that creates a consequence for bad laws. If you advocate, for example, for open borders like stupid, and did I mention stupid AOC? If you advocate for that, if you advocate for the abolishment of ICE and you advocate for the abolishment of the police, and then deaths result of that, I mean, if you created a law that, like the Minnesota, the Minneapolis City Council, they voted to abolish the police. Every one of those people that voted for the abolishment on that city council, they should be held directly responsible and liable for the consequences of that vote. If people die because of their actions, because you're not going to have police, if crime skyrockets, if people get raped, and if theft increases, rape increases, murder increases because of their direct actions, because they decided they wanted to play politics with people's lives, they should be held liable. And every person that dies should be on their head legally. Now, does that mean criminal charges? I don't know. Does that mean civil charges? Yeah. Probably that's probably the best route. Just hit them where it hurts. Hit them financially. If you ruin these people financially, guess what? They're not going to be able to defend themselves against millions upon millions upon millions of dollars of lawsuits, of wrongful death suits that directly relates to their laws. In fact, I would sue if I was this man's this man who lost his son. Let me Horace Lorenzo Anderson, Mr. Anderson here. I wanted to make sure I got his name right. If Mr. Anderson wanted to sue not only the city of Seattle, but Mayor Durkin herself, I would welcome that. I think that would set a good precedent in our legal system. Suing the mayor directly. I don't know what immunities the mayor has when it comes to that sort of thing. I'm not aware of Seattle, like specifically Seattle law, because I like that would fall under state law if I'm not mistaken, to see what liabilities and what immunities a mayor has from being sued. But I would name her in the case directly, and I would want her to pay out of her coffers directly for a wrongful death suit, because she had a direct hand in this. I think that this would be beneficial on a larger scale if if legislators, people that were in power and governors, like even in the case of New York with the fact that COVID patients were sent to senior homes, all the children of these parents that were in senior homes that died, or grandparents that died, they should bring suit directly to Cuomo, not the state of New York per se. They should sue the state of New York as well, but they should also sue Cuomo directly because it was his policy and they were aware of it, and he didn't act until, like, I think it was a month or so later when the things were going out of control. That's when he decided to act, when he started getting some really bad press about it. Another example, Governor Whitmer, who, because she didn't like Trump, wanted to ban hydroxychloroquine as a possible treatment. Well, if that period of time, I think for like 2 weeks or something, there was this whole big argument about whether she could actually do that or not, and she wasn't allowing that kind of thing. If that sort of blockade of care directly resulted in people dying, she directly should be sued. Not, I mean, the state, of course, as well, but she made that call. She made that decision. I think if people in power have a direct tie to their actions, I think that you would get more thoughtful leadership and more thoughtful legislation. And I also believe in term limits for everybody. If you're an elected official or even an appointed official, I don't believe in life terms for anything. And I believe that there should be not only checks and balances, but doubly checks and balances on everybody, from city councils all the way up to the Supreme Court. I feel that the Supreme Court doesn't have a check and balance right now. You have people like John Roberts, who is applying politics to his decision making, as well as other people. And you had certain cases where you had an obvious conflict of interest, and these people stayed on the bench. So I think that these justices are just acting with impunity, and again, the consequences of what they're doing, they're not fully appreciating the consequences of their actions. It's not connecting to them. When people like Pelosi pass law, she lives in that big gated community behind a wall. She doesn't care ultimately what happens to people. Why should she? She has $25,000 worth of ice cream. Like a $25,000 luxury refrigerator filled with ice cream. Why the hell would she care what happens to you, the peon, the little person? She doesn't care. And if there are horrible consequences to the laws that she passes, she doesn't care. She may tout righteousness and morality and all this bull crap that she keeps, vomiting out, but she doesn't care because it doesn't affect her. That's the thing. Legislators have these special privileges, for example. They don't pay for like haircuts. They don't pay for like a bunch of stuff. A lot of stuff is done for them. They have a bunch of privileges for being elected officials. They don't even have to use the same health care as the rest of the United States does. And they've never put that into law, but they're perfectly fine with giving themselves raises. Perfectly fine with that. Every time there's a law, there's a bill on the floor of the House or the Senate to give themselves a raise, they have no problem with that. That passes unanimously almost. Even AOC. Miss critique of capitalism and miss critique of money and things of that kind, and then a raise, yeah, yes please, and I'm justified because I gotta push my socialism. I mean, the absurdity, the sheer absurdity, and the sheer like disconnect, intellectual disconnect, and intellectual dishonesty more than anything. It's intellectual dishonesty and being a hypocrite of the highest order to do something like that. But going back to liability, people should be liable, and there should be a consequence for their actions. The fact that politicians bear little to no consequence, except maybe being condemned in the public arena for something, unless they are, you know, explicit in breaking laws. That's the only time you see some consequences, like Anthony Weiner, where he was sending pictures to minors, inappropriate pictures to minors. That's the only time when you kind of see something, and not always, because you have plenty of politicians that have engaged in very, very disgusting behaviors, possibly illegal behaviors. Allegedly, you know, I have to say allegedly. But they're still in power. They're still there. You have all sorts of like right now, last I checked, there were investigations into Ilhan Omar and AOC for financial improprieties with their you know, elections. And there were laws broken, or you know, election regulations, federal regulations that were broken. That's breaking the law, but I see no consequence for that because they're being protected by their party. And if anything, they're only going to get a slap in the wrist. So that to me is one of the biggest problems with our system here in the United States. I feel that limits need to be, there has to be term limits. There has to be term limits. There has to be more a direct liability for your actions. Those two things, and two things alone, in my opinion, will transform how law is made. It would raise the standard for their behaviors, their rhetoric, and for the laws that actually get passed. Maybe we won't get as much legislation passed within, like, in terms of quantity. Maybe because of the increased scrutiny, there'll be less laws being passed within a certain time frame. But I promise you that the quality of the legislation that would come through would be greatly improved. Because I don't think anybody wants to be dragged into the courts and have their finances torn apart. Like I said, I'm not even talking about criminal stuff. I'm not talking about criminal charges or criminal liabilities. I'm talking just civil. I'm talking about individual senators and individual representatives, individual mayors, individual governors being sued directly. Their pockets will be targeted because of their behaviors and the laws or the things that they allow. That would be a direct result in the harm of their constituents and the citizens of their state and or country. I am a firm believer that would be the best way to resolve this. It'll resolve a lot of the problems. It won't fix everything, but at least it'll resolve a lot of the problems that we see. This harsh partisanship, for example. There's no real consequence to this harsh partisanship. This galvanization that we have in our country, it doesn't affect them. It affects us, the people. It affects that kid that got shot in the street. It affects that father that lost his son. It affects us that we lose our jobs and we suffer financially. And that we have opportunities taken away from us because politicians have to play politics and the media has to play propaganda. Because to them, it's not important what the policies are. What's important to them is just retaining of power. And I know that what I'm saying is a hard ask. I know that it's not something that's going to happen. I don't think it's going to happen. I don't even think term limits are going to happen, even though you have some senators like Ted Cruz that actually said, yeah, let's do term limits. Surprisingly enough, you have some people in politics that are saying term limits are a good thing. Let's do it. And believe it or not, I actually agree a little bit with stupid, and did I mention stupid AOC when it comes to like money in politics? There is too much money in politics. The only problem with AOC is that she says it, but she still takes money. She had a lot of money in her primary. She had like over $10 million. Yet somehow money is evil. But as long as she holds on to the $10 million, it's good because she's righteous somehow. When money touches her coffers, they suddenly become holy. That's the only thing I can figure in her case. But that's a big problem. Money in politics. And I've said this before in the past as well. I also believe that corporations should not be political. All these different things, corporations themselves should not be political. You shouldn't have the branding of the day for whatever political item you're interested in. You shouldn't have money going to politicians. If you want to act like a PAC, you register as a PAC. If you want to provide a service and good to people, you do that. Now, individuals, like if a CEO wants to take his earnings and donate to a political party, that's an individual. He has every right to do that. I don't care what the individuals do within an organization or within a company. If the CEO of Mozilla, for example, he donated to an organization that's against gay marriage, that's his right. If the CEO of Google wants to donate to the Democrat Party, that's his right. I don't care about what individuals do. I do care what companies, as a company, does, because that exerts far more power and influence. It has a far greater reach because of their brand, like Coca-Cola, like Pepsi, like Subway, like Wendy's, Chick-fil-A. When you have a corporation that touts a political ideology, you're no longer a corporation. You're an advocacy group. You're a PAC. You're a political entity at that point. And I think there should be laws passed that prevent that. Corporations themselves should not be allowed to donate anything. Only individuals within the company if they want to do so. Companies should not be donating, period. Even to charitable organizations. And they shouldn't be donating to other political organizations. I don't think a corporation has any business doing that. Like I said, if individuals want to do that within the company, be my guest. Go for it. I don't care. You can have the entire board of Google or the entire board of Amazon donate to the Democrat Party as individuals. Fine, do so. But don't hide behind the company. Don't use the company as propaganda. Don't use the branding as a platform. That's where I have a problem. Like Nike. And like other brands. Like sporting goods, like Dick's Sporting Goods, where they were playing politics with the whole going against the Second Amendment laws because that's what they wanted to do. They wanted to play politics, and it hurt them. I mean, at least the silver lining is that when a lot of these companies, at least play politics, it doesn't hurt all of them, but it does hurt some. Dick's got hurt when it came to that decision that they were going to just violate people's Second Amendment rights. Nike has been taking a huge hit. The NFL has been taking a huge hit because of their politics that they're playing. And now other sporting organizations are also going to take hits. NASCAR, with that stunt with Bubba Smollett, with the fake news, that's gonna hit them very, very hard. There's people in Major League Baseball that are being ridiculous too. The NFL, we already talked about that. Like I mentioned, Major League Baseball, basketball, NBA. The NBA, I mean, they've been very political. I don't, and it has affected their viewership, I'm sure. So, it's ridiculous to me that companies do that. And said that, let me just check something very quickly. All right, we've been streaming for about an hour and a half. I think we're at a good point to conclude here. I've soapboxed far enough, I think. Um, Tomorrow is the 4th of July, so I do want to just mention that and say Happy Independence Day to everybody. And I'll do one final little soapbox about that because I for all its flaws that America may have, I love this country. I think this country is one of the most prosperous. It's one of the best countries in the world. There's a lot of good that has come out of this country. And it has so much potential for more. It really does. And I want everybody to recognize like how much good has come from this country and to celebrate that. And to thank God that we're not the UK, because look what's happening there. I mean, thank God that we separated ourselves from that hot mess. So, happy 4th of July. Be safe. Celebrate safely. Don't blow your hands off with the fireworks or anything like that. Be responsible. Have fun. And I just hope everybody has a wonderful, wonderful 4th of July and Independence Day and truly appreciate America for the wonderful country that it is. You know, there's the songs God Bless America, and listen to those patriotic tunes and how beautiful the words are that celebrate our country. And ignore the news on that day. I don't plan to look at social media on July 4th. I would suggest everybody do the same. Ignore the news. Ignore the hate. Ignore the lies and the rewriting of history. Ignore all that nonsense. Celebrate your independence from propaganda, your independence from lies and politicization of everything and vilification of everything just because you happen to be of a certain political ideology or some other political ideology. Celebrate your independence from all that. And celebrate the fact that you live in one of the greatest countries in the world that have provided for so many people. It has been a honeypot for so many that were left wanting by their countries of origin. And America provided for them. America provided for them. These people required nourishment, and America was the teat that they suckled on, so to speak. And we welcome them. The United States welcomed them. They welcomed my family. I'm from an immigrant background myself. So for all its flaws, and I'm not saying the United States is perfect. I'm not saying that the United States has no issues. I'm not saying that at all. But all I am saying is that despite its flaws, there are silver linings. There is good. There is positivity. There is prosperity. There is opportunity. There is improvement. In the short history of the United States, we've gone through amazing amounts of change for the better. And I think that if people just kept a positive mindset on our country and a positive mindset on politics and try and try not to vilify people all the time and vilify uh ideologies all the time. And I think if people just tried to focus on the good that America that has done, is doing presently, and can do in the future, I think we can come together as a nation. It's not going to be easy, but at least for one day, let's just all be Americans. Forget the politics. For one day, let's all be Americans. Let's all celebrate America. Let's all celebrate this country. And like I said, be safe, have fun. And remember, kids, don't be complacent. Happy 4th. Take it easy.